a motivational script inspired by the life of Muniba Mazari, the Iron Lady of Pakistan. Production note: estimated runtime approximately 40 minutes at a natural speaking pace. Bracketed lines are optional visual/pacing suggestions. Swap them for whatever footage you actually have. This script is built from publicly documented facts about Muniba Mazari's life. No quotes are invented and placed in her mouth. Everything about what she said or believes is paraphrased in general terms. So if you want an exact quote on screen, pull it yourself from a verified interview and check the wording first. Part 1. The hook. Let me start with a question. Have you ever gone to sleep in one life and woken up in another? Not metaphorically. I mean the kind of change where one moment you are laughing, dreaming, planning a future, and by morning, none of that future exists anymore. The body you had is not the body you have. The plans you made are not plans anymore. They are just memories of a person you used to be. Most of us will never face a moment that extreme, but some people do. And what they choose to do next tells the rest of us something we need to hear. This is the story of a woman born in a small city in southern Punjab, Pakistan, a city called Rahim Yar Khan. A woman who was told by doctors in a hospital bed that she would never walk again, that she would likely never be able to have a child of her own, that the future she had imagined for herself was over. Her name is Muniba Mazari. Today, the world calls her the Iron Lady of Pakistan. But she wasn't born iron. Nobody is. Iron is made under pressure, under heat, under weight that would break most things. This is a story about that kind of making. And it's also a story about you. Because somewhere in your life, whether it's already happened or it's still ahead of you, there will be a night that feels like it will never end. Hold on to one thing as we go through this. The sun does not ask permission to rise. It doesn't wait for the night to feel finished. It simply comes. Every single day, without fail, somewhere on this earth, the sun is rising on someone who thought their story was over. Somewhere right now, in a hospital room much like the one this story is about to describe, someone is lying awake, watching the window slowly turn from black to gray, with absolutely no proof yet that anything good is coming. This is for them too. And it's for whichever version of that room you happen to be sitting in tonight. Stay with me. This is Every Sunrise Brings New Hope. Part 2. An ordinary life before the storm. A young woman in Punjab, a quiet household, a wedding. Every story like this has a before. It's worth spending a moment there because once someone becomes a symbol, the Iron Lady, the UN ambassador, the inspiration, it's easy to forget she started out as an ordinary young woman with ordinary dreams. Muniba was born on the 3rd of March, 1987, in Rahim Yar Khan, a city in southern Punjab. She came from a conservative family belonging to the Baloch Mazari tribe, the kind of household where a girl's path in life is often already being written for her before she's old enough to argue about it. She was married at 18 to a pilot in the Pakistan Air Force. Sit with that for a second. At 18, when many people are still deciding what to study or negotiating a curfew with their parents, Muniba was already stepping into the role of a wife in someone else's household. In the years since, she has spoken publicly and candidly about how that marriage was not the fairy tale it might have looked like from the outside. Still, she had a life, a routine, a household, a name to carry. She had whatever ordinary hopes a young woman in her early 20s has, a future that, whatever shape it took, at least felt like it belonged to her. She had no way of knowing that on one unremarkable evening in February, on a long and familiar stretch of highway, almost all of it would be taken from her in a matter of seconds. We never do know in advance which evening that will be. That's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath every before story, hers or anyone's. Nobody wakes up on the morning of their worst day already knowing it's their worst day. It always looks, right up until it doesn't, like just another ordinary trip between two cities. Think about your own life for a second. Somewhere in it, there is almost certainly an evening you didn't think twice about at the time. An ordinary dinner, an ordinary drive, an ordinary phone call that turned out only in hindsight to be the last evening of a version of your life you didn't know you were about to lose. Most of us can point to at least one. That's not meant to frighten you. It's meant to explain why a story like Muniba's isn't really about her being unusually unlucky. It's about her being exactly as unprepared as the rest of us always are, right up until the moment none of us get to prepare for, until it isn't. Part 3. The night that changed everything. Headlights receding into the distance, then a heart cut to black. On the 27th of February 2008, 21-year-old Muniba was traveling by road with her husband from Quetta back toward Rahim Yar Khan, a long, tiring drive across some of the most remote highway stretches in the country. Somewhere along that road, exhausted from hours behind the wheel, her husband fell asleep driving. The car flipped. Her husband was thrown clear of the wreck and escaped with relatively minor injuries. Muniba was not so fortunate. She was trapped underneath the overturned vehicle. Sit with that image for a second. Not to dwell on the tragedy of it, but to understand the scale of what she was about to face. One moment, she's a passenger on a long drive home. The next, she is pinned beneath a car, injured, in pain, on a stretch of road far from any real medical help. She was carried to the nearest hospital first, but it wasn't equipped to handle injuries this severe. She was moved again to a hospital in Rahim Yar Khan. When that still wasn't enough, she was moved a third time, all the way to the Aga Khan University Hospital in Karachi, one of the best equipped hospitals in the country. By the time she reached proper care, the damage had already been done. Her spine had been badly injured. The doctors delivered the news the way doctors often have to, bluntly, clinically, because there is no gentle way to say something this devastating. She was paraplegic, paralyzed from the waist down. Her lower body would not move on its own again. Then came a second blow, one that by many accounts hurt just as much as the first. She was told she would likely never be able to carry a child of her own. Imagine receiving both of those sentences while lying flat on your back, unable to sit up without help, unable to reach for a glass of water on your own. Not one future closing, but two. The future of walking through the world on her own 2 feet, and the future of the family she had already started imagining. She went through surgery, and then came something almost harder than the surgery itself. 2 full years bedridden, while her body slowly, painfully, relearned enough function that she could eventually be moved into a wheelchair. 2 years, not 2 weeks, Not 2 months, 2 years of staring at a ceiling, of physiotherapy, of discovering that the body she had known her whole life now operated by entirely new rules. If this story stopped here, it would already be a story about survival. But it isn't where the story stops, it's only where it actually begins. Part 4, the brush in the hospital bed. Here is the part of the story that matters most, not the accident itself, but what happened in the silence afterward. Lying in that hospital bed, unable to walk, facing a body and a future that looked nothing like the one she'd planned, Muniba could have simply disappeared into grief. Nobody would have blamed her. Grief, after a loss like that, isn't weakness. It's the natural human response to something enormous being taken from you. But somewhere in those long, motionless days, she picked up a paintbrush. Not because she had some grand plan to become a famous artist, not because she knew it would one day turn into a brand, a career, a symbol. She started painting simply because it was something she could still do. Her legs no longer worked, her hands still did. And in a life that had suddenly been reduced to a long list of things she couldn't do anymore, painting became the first thing she discovered she still could. That distinction matters more than it might sound like it should. When everything is taken from you at once, the mind naturally starts cataloging the losses. I can't walk, I can't run, I can't have the future I'd pictured. I can't. It is so easy to get trapped inside that list because the list is long and it is real. What Muniba did, maybe without fully realizing it at the time, was start a second, much shorter list, but a list that mattered more because it was the one she could actually act on. I can still move my hands. I can still see color. I can still put something onto a blank canvas that wasn't there a moment ago. That's the whole turning point, really. It wasn't a dramatic speech. It wasn't a lightning bolt of inspiration. It was a woman in a hospital bed, quietly discovering she still had something to give the world, even while everything else was still being figured out. Over time, that small, private act of painting became something much bigger. She eventually built her own art brand, calling it Muniba's Canvas, with a slogan that doubles as a philosophy: let your walls wear colors. Working mostly in acrylics, her paintings began appearing in exhibitions, first in Lahore, where 27 of her works were shown at a single gallery, and later internationally, including a showing in Dubai titled, "And I Choose to Live." She has also donated pieces to charitable causes, including efforts supporting refugees. Notice the title of that Dubai exhibition for a moment. Not, "And I was forced to survive." Not, "And I had no other option." She chose it. Every brushstroke was a small, quiet act of choosing to keep participating in her own life instead of letting the accident finish writing the rest of the story for her. That's the real lesson hiding inside this part of her journey. Recovery rarely arrives as one giant triumphant moment. It arrives in the smallest, least dramatic decisions. Picking up a brush, showing up for one more physiotherapy session, saying yes to one more small thing you're still capable of, even while 100 other things still feel impossible. There's a reason so many people who go through catastrophic loss find their way to some form of creative expression: painting, writing, music, even just talking into a phone camera late at night. It isn't because art magically fixes anything. It's because creating something is one of the few acts available to a person that says quietly but unmistakably, I am still here, and I still have something to put into the world. A blank canvas doesn't ask what's wrong with your legs. A blank page doesn't care what the doctors said. It only asks what you're going to put on it next. And for someone whose entire life has just been reduced to a list of things they can no longer do, that single, narrow, answerable question can be the difference between disappearing and staying. Part 5. Becoming the Iron Lady. 5. From that hospital bed, over the years that followed, Muniba's life took turns that even she likely never expected. In 2011, 4 years after the accident, and after being told she would probably never have children, she became a mother. She adopted a son. Whatever the doctor's predictions had been, she built a family anyway, in the way that was available to her. And by every account, that role became one of the most meaningful parts of her life. She kept painting, kept building her art career, and then something else happened. An international hair care and beauty brand, Toni & Guy, chose her to front a campaign called Women of Substance, making her one of the first wheelchair-using models the region had seen fronting a major campaign. Think about what that actually means in an industry that almost everywhere in the world has historically had an extremely narrow idea of whose body is allowed to be seen, admired, celebrated. She didn't just get a seat inside that industry, she rolled straight through a door that had never really been opened for someone like her before. Around the same period, she also became Pakistan's first wheelchair-using female television anchor, stepping into a studio in front of a camera in an industry built almost entirely around one narrow image of what a host is supposed to look like. She simply didn't fit that mold. And she hosted anyway. Then in 2014, she gave a talk that changed the scale of her story entirely. Speaking candidly about her marriage, her accident, and everything that followed, her TEDx talk traveled far beyond the room she gave it in, reaching audiences well outside Pakistan. Almost overnight, a woman from Rahim Yar Khan was being watched and discussed by people on the other side of the world. In December 2015, that growing platform turned into something official. Muniba was appointed as Pakistan's first National Goodwill Ambassador for UN Women. She was 28 years old, an age when plenty of people are still figuring out their first real career step. And she was now representing her country on one of the largest stages in the world, speaking about gender equality and ending violence against women. The recognition kept arriving after that. She was named to the BBC's 100 Women list for 2015. She appeared on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2016. In the years that followed, she'd be named among the world's most influential Muslims. And she would go on to be appointed as an SDG advocate by the United Nations Secretary General himself. Somewhere along this journey, the nickname stuck, the Iron Lady of Pakistan. But notice something about that entire timeline. None of it happened the week after the accident. None of it happened during the 2 years she spent bedridden. It happened slowly, in sequence. Painting, then motherhood, then a modeling campaign, then a hosting job, then a talk, then a global platform, each one built on top of the one before it. Nobody becomes the Iron Lady overnight. They become it, one small, difficult, unglamorous step at a time, most of which nobody is ever there to film. It's also worth noticing what each of those firsts actually cost her to claim. Being the first wheelchair-using model in a major regional campaign meant walking, or rather wheeling, into rooms where nobody had built a ramp for her, literally or professionally, before she arrived. Being the first wheelchair-using female anchor in the country meant sitting under studio lights that were never designed with her in mind. Every one of those firsts is a polite way of saying nobody like her had been allowed in before. Which means every door she went through, she had to open herself, usually while people were still deciding whether to let her. Part 6. Why the sunrise is the right metaphor. Now let's step back from Muniba's specific story for a moment, because there's something bigger sitting underneath it. The actual reason this video is called Every Sunrise Brings New Hope. Think about what a sunrise really is. It isn't the world getting a fresh, undamaged start. The mountains are still the same mountains. Whatever wreckage existed yesterday is still there in the daylight. A sunrise doesn't undo anything. What it does is far more useful than undoing. It offers light to keep going. That's exactly what Muniba's recovery looked like, if you study it closely. The accident was never undone. Her body didn't go back to the way it was before. The 2 years in that hospital bed weren't erased from the record. What changed each new day was that she had a small amount of new light to work with, a little more strength, a little more movement in her hands, one more idea for a painting, one more reason to keep going. Hope, real hope, not the greeting card kind, but the kind that actually carries people through catastrophic loss, rarely arrives as one enormous rescue. It arrives the way sunlight arrives, gradually, quietly, a little more each day, whether or not anyone feels ready for it. This is worth repeating because so much of the way we talk about hope and resilience makes it sound like a single decision, as if there's one dramatic morning when a person wakes up and decides, today I will be strong, and from then on, everything is different. That is not how it actually worked for Muniba, and it is not how it works for almost anyone who has walked through something similar. Hope isn't a decision you make once. It's the decision you keep making every single morning, sometimes without feeling brave at all while you're making it. Some mornings, hope probably looked like nothing more dramatic than agreeing to another physiotherapy session. Some mornings, it looked like picking up a paintbrush for 20 quiet minutes because staring at the ceiling had become unbearable. Some mornings, it likely didn't feel like hope at all. It just felt like getting through the next hour. That's the part of the sunrise metaphor most people miss. We picture hope as the moment the sun breaks fully over the horizon, gold, dramatic, unmistakable. But most of what a sunrise actually is the long, quiet, barely visible shift from complete darkness to the first gray edge of light. Almost nobody is watching at that exact moment. It doesn't look impressive, but it's already happening. And it's the part that makes everything after it possible. There's a smaller story inside Muniba's larger one that captures this well. Among the people she came to know through her advocacy work was a young survivor of the horrific 2014 attack on the Army Public School in Peshawar, a boy named Waleed Khan, who was shot while trying to protect his classmates and has needed a wheelchair of his own ever since. Muniba has spoken about the strange, humbling position she found herself in, being asked to comfort and reassure a child who had survived something almost unthinkable, only to come away feeling that his outlook had taught her something in return. That's what resilience actually looks like out in the world. It isn't usually a solo performance. It's recognition. One person who has rebuilt themselves, recognizing the same quiet rebuilding happening in someone else, and both of them drawing something from it. There's one more thing worth noticing about hope that behaves like sunlight instead of a single rescue.